Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 6 with Janet and I. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Jill.
So glad to see you. And I just want to welcome everybody. Um, we don't have the topic predefined, so we're preset. So that's how we roll. We're being very flexible and dynamic and just kind of what feels like it wants to be said. I have a running list of ideas in my head of potentially great topics. And I feel like both of us, Janet, we want to offer something that's useful to people. There might be instances when you listen or watch the podcast where you feel like, well, that was just a good conversation. I appreciate listening to these two people talk. And there might be other times when you're like, whoa, this one feels like, especially for me, or I want to share this with someone. I feel like they could get something out of it. I do feel, Janet, like both of us, one of our specialties is taking something that we see within spiritual experiences or personal growth advocates that we feel is limiting. And we like to offer something very different or a different take on something that is very standard within those types of communities.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yes, that completely lights me up. And I do think with the way our synergistic, just who we are really
Mm-hmm.
invites that in. And these are energetic. I do want to add that because well, the two or more are gathered thing, we mentioned that before, but there's
Oh,
something
yeah.
happens, when people gather and we open up a container for people. So that does happen, even though it might just seem like a conversation. I know from the way I work with reality and stuff, there's more going on
Mhm.
that meets the eye, and I love that.
Yeah.
And everybody's a part of that, right? Everybody
Yeah.
that kind of listens whenever they listen to this or watch it.
Okay, that's a potential topic, and maybe we don't talk about it the full time, but where two or more gather in Christianity is his, right? In his name.
Mm.
Because there's a masculine identification for God. But that's in the New Testament, where two or more gather in his name, he is, God is. And I remember as a Christian, I didn't question it.
Mm.
And as a somebody who has allowed more of that Christ consciousness and how I know Jesus into my heart and from the inside out to kind of help me go farther, if you will, than the Bible.
Mm.
Um, I started to not like that whole idea that we're two or more gather. And my, lawyer-ish kind of side of me was like, well, what's wrong with just one? You know what I mean? Jesus didn't need to be anybody else. It was Jesus as himself, fully as himself, as fully source energy, and that was enough. So I don't want to have. Why do we have to have two or more? I sort of got like, well, I don't want that to be true. I don't like that it might be true. And what if it isn't true? Right. So it's kind of my 2-year-old version of my interpretation. It probably wasn't that toddler-ish, but it was more like, is that actually right? Right? Do we really have to be with two or more? So then the more I started to play with that, the more free I actually felt from the
Mm.
idea that it doesn't require two or more people for source to be present, for change to be possible, for growth or exciting things to happen. You as yourself and you amidst the source energy, the God energy you are, is actually more than sufficient for many, many aspects of feeling fulfilled and inspired and enthusiastic about who and what you are and even the world around you. So I just wanted to offer that little
Oh.
eraser item I got out at one point and see what you think about that, Janet.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny because it never occurred to me that that could possibly mean that I am less if I'm not with somebody. Like I had to be with
Oh,
somebody.
that's good.
So that never even occurred to me.
I love
That
that.
which, because of course I am whole and complete in and of
Yeah.
myself. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the reason I like that expression is because if you guys couldn't tell, I really do love life, even if I'm having a bad day. I can still geek out on it. It's like, wow, that is like super bad. That's the worst bad I've had in a long time, right? But So with that, when I'm with somebody else and with a group of people, and in this format, it's been interesting for me to explore it because there's all these other people, that will listen to this in this timeless sort of way. So
Mm,
I've always thought about it in that way. It's like a focus of how we interact heart to heart that
mm.
allows greater possibilities, and I haven't ever considered it in any other way, so, yeah, please don't take that, in that
I can
singular, I don't have God.
literal way. I can literally just imagine the soulfulness of me going, I got a lot of problems with the words. There's like an editor, Jill, in there that's just like, some of these words, the way that I don't know if in the original language it was fine, but in the English, I've got some problems with the way this is worded. And I'm going to get in there with an eraser and a my red editor pen and just go, no.
Well, and I hope nobody's offended by these statements I'm going to make, but what I in terms of and I'm not a biblical scholar by any stretch. I do know bits and pieces, even though my family was kind of quasi-Catholic growing up. Um, I do think that the Bible was written by humans, and I think all humans have filters. So I know in my family, we talk about things that happened when I was growing up, and it's like we didn't grow up in the same family. I was like, wait, are you sure? We'll talk about an event and everybody has their own lens on it, right? And so when you have humans, writing down things that whoever said, right? Jesus said this, there's different gospels about, written by these beings, right? That were in human form. There's a lot of, I'll say, interpretation about that, even though they didn't mean to,
Mm,
even though they didn't mean to. So I think that I hope people experience, this is my hope for people, that they take
yeah.
what's in the Bible and allow that to go with their insides and do with it what's
Mm,
really helpful and not to be restrictive in any way,
yeah.
and to
Mm,
have it be in accordance with your values and your morals and
yeah.
what you know to be true and how you want to live versus
Mm,
some people have used the Bible in ways to not be kind to people and to really practice do things that are antithetical to, I think, our nature as
mm,
humans, our
mhm.
true nature that's weird.
And even
Yeah.
antithetical to a version of God that they would probably believe in too. So that gets really interesting. I would expand that to really any faith.
Mm,
When I have concern and compassion and amount of respect for individuals that are like, my God is full and completely expressed in this book. This is the book. If we just follow this book, then we're good with God. The idea that any interpretation of God could be defined in a book is just what? I mean, I know God in such a more expansive, creator, constantly changing and evolving sort of way. And yes, there are fundamental tenets and things like that, but how we utilize them and how we need to rely on them should be to the benefit of humanity, not to the detriment of humanity. So yeah, I for anyone that would be offended, I can't imagine a, a listener or viewer that would be offended would even be here right now. But if they are, and if they are offended, I'm not offending your God by saying that your God is bigger than that book.
mm,
I'm literally not. But I know it can be felt that way. And I know some of the most devout believers that I know from multiple faiths are acting and behaving in a way that sometimes looks like they're worshiping a book more than they're worshiping God.
mhm.
And I find that curious. I do.
Yeah.
But if that's all they feel like they can hang on to, I was going to say cling to, and I didn't want that to sound negative. But if that's all they can trust is, well, that's all we got is the book, because our guy is gone. You know what I mean? So all we have is this remnant. The idea that God disappeared in a way and left you with a book, and no fresh ideas and no fresh inspiration is just sad to me, actually. The fact that God's went to what, the Emerald City? I don't know, where did God go? But when this guy left, then you're on your own. Good, you got that book. You better you better know it. You know what I mean? It's just so, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be dismissive, but I am being dismissive. I acknowledge that. But not
Yeah.
of God, just of these traditions.
Yes, I'm a firm believer in a personal relationship to God. I mean, we are source.
Mm.
That's my thing. God emanates through me as me. That's my belief system. And people are free to, disagree with that if you like, but that is my experience. And so the fact that it requires that something or somebody stands in the way, or I can't have a personal experience,
Mm.
something needs to stand between me and God.
Mm.
That'll get me, I
Yeah.
get a little fired up about that one. I was like,
Yeah.
"Really? Really?
I know. Really? I
Really?"
can't be close to God by myself. Oh, really? Who do I need? Who's my, go between? Who's my intermediary? And normally it's a very formal intermediary that's been, following all these rules and with a lot of restriction and, a lot of repression in a lot of ways, which humans are not good at those types of jobs.
Mm,
Um, and in some ways, we're asking those intermediaries, whether it's a priest or a bishop or whatever, we're asking them to act like a perfected God,
mm,
but they're human. So that's like, you're going to be disappointed. They're going to be disappointed in themselves because there's this automatic, impossible standard. And again, where is the grace? That's
mm,
what I thought all of this was about, was God's grace, because we need it, because we are fallible, not infallible, right? Um, the other kind of idea that I feel like a lot of folks have in multiple belief systems, including, metaphysical, spiritual, non-religious, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual kind of folks. They have this idea that God is an all-knowing God. In other words, to look at that literally again, um, well, God knows everything. God knows everything that has happened. God knows everything that is happening, and God knows everything that will happen. Right. So there is this all-knowing prototype, I want to say, of God, that when I hear you say we are source energy, I feel like some people interpret that as, oh, so you know everything. Just like, no, I just want to clarify that, because in my experience with God, God doesn't know everything. So when something horrible happens in the reality, it's not like, God's behind a newspaper going, yep, that right on schedule. Everybody okay? Oh, that one's not. Oh, what was in their cards? Just, this all-knowing, ambivalent, non-empathic sort of. I feel like source energy is like, damn it, I know it was possible, but that, ouch. Is everybody okay? Who needs a hug? Who needs to
mm,
know I love them, even though this shitty thing happened that I wasn't puppeting it. It just literally happened. It can happen, but it didn't have to happen. It wasn't meant to happen. It's not on anyone's lesson card for Earth. It's just a shitty thing that happens on Earth. And I have endless love and endless grace for everyone involved and everyone not involved.
mhm.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't know. What do you think about that, Janet? Is that too extreme?
well, we have free will here.
Mm.
That is one of the
Mm.
gifts that we have in this reality. And how we choose to use that, that means that, God is not some, I don't know, I want to call it stern, they call those headmasters, like doing it this way. It's not like that. I believe it's a God of love, and the
Mm.
creative abilities we have here and how we use them with that free will. That's what we're doing, right?
Mm.
And we've certainly, with that free will, I really don't think any of us thought it would kind of get as bad as it did, meaning that people, wow, this could be a really deep topic here, but I'm going to continue
So
it.
could free will, by the way. But Just want to put that little pin in that. I can hear people going, these two, these two biatches believe there's free will. I can't listen anymore. It's debatable, people. And I would love to debate that. But anyway,
Oh my
sorry.
goodness, we could debate probably anything, but but the choices that people made with free will, with that, if we give up our connection, I'll say, our
Mm,
ability to have that God consciousness, pretend it's not there, however we go about it, and do things that are like anti-God, right? That harm another,
mm.
or for whatever reason, we kind of went down
Ugh,
some paths.
yeah,
And um and then once you lose connection to that God source, you need power. And so
yeah.
that's when we started getting it from other people, right? And doing worse things because we needed it,
Mm,
and I'm gonna get it,
hmm.
right? And in that whole progression, I don't think any of us anticipated, because I do believe at our higher levels, source runs through me as me, that we participate and created this reality. I know that I did. I can speak for myself, right? I know that I
Mm.
participated in creating a lot of things here. I won't go into the list that I'm conscious about, but I do know. But so I don't think we knew kind of how bad it was going to get, because the less connection you have to your source consciousness, and the
Mm,
less you know that that's running through you as you, and that is
mm.
a source, that is how we are animated, that is how we are fed, that is how we are inspired, that is,
Yeah.
it does everything for us, right? If you don't have that, then
Hmm.
things can get really bad, and they did here. And I think we're in that,
Okay.
collapsing. This is my creation story, you could say, and I do
Hmm.
believe that we're all kind of self-correcting that now. We're like, whoa,
Mm,
I'm not, that doesn't feel right. Why am I still doing that? That's antithetical to the God that I know myself to be. And, it doesn't mean I
mm,
don't color outside the line sometimes, right? And I don't judge myself for that, but I'm, continually looking at what feels better and what is a more enjoyable experience, because I tell you, it's a lot more fun.
yeah.
It's a win-win on both parties, which is that two or more are gathered when we have that openness and that love-based heart. The creational energy available in those moments
Hmm. Hmm.
is really big. And I use this in my work a lot, but it's alchemizing, right? It's not, the potential within it expands when there's more source consciousness available, because I bring what I know and my skill sets, and whoever brings theirs, and then wow, look, there's something else. So that's the unlimited nature of it.
I like that. I do believe in free will, by the way. I don't believe we all use it, and I certainly don't believe we use our free will in a conscious aspect. I believe a lot of times we use it in a thoughtless sort of way, as we as humans. We're just kind of known for thoughtless creation and thoughtless decision making and thoughtless choices. And it doesn't have to go bad, but it can go really, really, really bad. And I agree with you that source, we didn't know like how bad that part of the design template could get. So it's sort of like, ooh, like if you're going to incarnate on Earth, like my jokey line is this reality comes with a lot of warning labels, and just like warning labels on medicine, not everybody reads them. Like, oh
Mhm.
shoot, I was supposed to take it on an empty stomach, or dang it, I was supposed to take it with food. I mean, I think we've all been in those situations before, and this reality is even more serious in terms of reading the warning labels. So that's one part I wanted to add on to what you were saying. I also, in terms of the free will, I believe that really begins and ends with ourselves. We have free will over us and what we are and how we operate ourselves in this reality. We can use that free will, or we can hand over that authority to others and other institutions and faith-based institutions or ideological types of organizations. I'll just let them think for me what's right, what's wrong, what I am, what I'm not. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to hand over our authority in this reality. And it starts from the beginning with whomever is raising us and calling us, they acting like they're in charge of who and what we are, right? And that continues on throughout our lives. People claiming or inferring or really being in charge of us. And we're like, we either are good little rule followers and we don't question that, or we question everything. Again, there's positives and negative spectrums to all of those approaches, but it's a high risk environment. The other part that I wanted to add on to from what you said, Janet, in terms of the consciousness and we are source energy, and you're either connecting to that source energy, to that consciousness, that godly consciousness, or you're not. I've been experimenting with this idea, and so far the results in my client work have been very, very good. So I definitely wanted to make sure I included here, because feeling connected or not connected is very it's very unreliable in this reality. Some days people feel like, oh, it's just so connected, like I just felt so on the flow, I felt so guided by God, I felt signs, and whatever metrics they're using for feeling connected, as they're calling it. So what I started playing with is, what if we can't not be connected? What if source and consciousness and light and love isn't something you connect to? It's something that you are. And in this reality, we can not operate from it or operate from it. We can operate from that connection, which is what we are, or we can, operate in a less connected or dimmed fashion in a way. I find that so much more empowering, because then somebody doesn't have to worry, and it's almost like, am I plugged in today or not? You are plugged into yourself and you can't not be plugged in. But how are you feeling? How are you identifying yourself? How are you allowing your source energy to be present with you no matter what's going on? And I feel like we have a lot better access when you realize, in terms of like the sun is the sun. The sun isn't like, oh my God, there's a cloud on Earth. Well, my day's over. You know what I mean? The sun's like, I am so good. You know what I mean? Let's pretend it's a perpetual sun that doesn't have a limited life, because that's just space time stuff. But that constant availability, no matter what, is such an upgraded way to consider that connection to source consciousness that you are. So I just wanted to offer that edit. It's a major shift, even though it's just a few words that are changed. It's big.
Yes, I sort of my saying around that is my soul knows what my soul's doing. Like
It's good. Yeah.
it's working, right? It's
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
And
And
sometimes
can't not know what you're doing.
that's right.
Even
And
when we don't know what we're doing, it's okay if we don't know what we're doing.
it
We have
is
full permission. It's expected in this reality. You're good.
absolutely. And that's what we do in our human minds
Mm.
is we sort of equate that if I don't feel happy, if everything doesn't appear to be going smoothly, and sometimes those unsmooth moments are opening up a brand new chapter of our lives, right? But from our human, we can't see it that way because we just can't in that moment, right? So it's like not connecting those things.
Mm,
This is
that's good.
basically expanding on what you're saying from a different viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
It's,
There's a
you know,
lot of freedom in it too.
there
A
is.
lot of freedom. Yeah, go ahead.
And our feelings aren't necessary, not to use our feelings as a metric,
Oh
you know?
man.
Ooh, and
Warning label.
I think that was in the last, podcast we did just about how we can feel multiple things at the same time,
Mm,
that happens for me, that's just how I live.
hmm
And it's just about where my focus is about because it's like if I'm feeling very emotional, I'm not gonna, well, spiritual bypass, right? I'm not gonna pretend like that's not happening, right? I'm gonna be present to that and I'm gonna give myself all that I need there. And the way that I do that is to hold the bigger me at the same time
mm,
and allow that unity consciousness within, right? The part of me that knows love like no other, right? To
mm.
kind of love that part of me that's just like, And so Yeah, like don't confuse them, like we are
Mm,
that. We are
it's
God,
so
and
big.
you know, and
It's big. Knowing that, well, deciding we can't know it in a proof evidence-based way, but considering, right? Trying on the idea that you are source energy and you can't not be source energy gives you so much more access to God all the time, no matter what's going on, even when we're little assholes or whatever. I feel there's so much grace in that. There's so much permission to be godly in the best sense of the word, loving, compassionate, caring, understanding, wise, insightful, inspired, and inspiring. I love that part of it. And it doesn't mean we are God over others. We are acting in cohesion with the God energy we have available to us. I love
Mm,
that. And
mm,
I love that if it truly is always there and can't not be there, then you can trust it more. And you can also, I don't want to say give yourself a break from it, because who would want to break from that? But let me see if I can explain this. I have observed many devoted spiritual beings in this reality feel like their spirituality, which I'm sorry, it does turn into a religion, even though some of them are like, I'm not religious. I'm like, you're acting more religious than any religious person I know. And I mean that in a repressed, like, oh my God, I hope I'm getting this right because I'm terrified to mess up sort of way. That's religion. It is. I'm afraid I can't be wrong because it means everything to be right. And you can be spiritual but not religious and basically end up acting that way. That is so sad. And it's not allowing the grace and the access of God to be a part of your nature versus something you have to work on or something you have to study or be devoted to 24/7, 365, or that you have to make up for the years or the moments when you weren't like that. It's just, it didn't have to be a job, right? I love the idea that Jesus disappeared for 40 days and 40 nights. And I hope he was chilling in the desert, not like, oh, you know what I mean? Just like, you know what I mean? Just, I hope he was just like, oh, the stars are amazing out here. And I don't have to talk to anybody. There's a lizard. That's so cool. Got to watch out for the snakes, got to get some water, got to, get some food, whatever, right? But the idea that everything is a job and everything is work, and wow, there's so much effort in being connected as the source energy we are in this reality. I love to offer another approach to all of that that is so much easier. I truly enjoy as my Jill things that have nothing of a spiritual nature necessarily to it, whether it's, the British baking championship or some other silly TV. I love to just totally mindlessly go, oh, I like that. I hope that person wins, or that judge was so unfair. You know what I mean? Just total silliness. I love that part of my life. I love that that's not, high stakes and my, ascension is, dependent on it. I feel like I'm a way better Jill with this relaxed approach to being and allowing my source energy, that it's always there. And even when I act like a jerk sometimes, they're just like, okay, that was like, what the heck, girl, what were you doing? Sorry. Remember when I said that 2 seconds ago? I'm sorry, 2 days ago. Can we just pretend that never happened? I'm so sorry. I was not being myself that day or whatever. Owning it, just literally feeling your own accountability, not groveling, not pretending it didn't happen because we're so spiritually advanced. And well, we would never be a jerk. I mean, we're so above that.
oh my, a couple things I wanted to say. I was thinking about, making spirituality religious. And from my community and in terms of people that do healing work or energetic work, or there are rituals that people have created that are
Mhm.
sometimes incredibly helpful, right?
Oh,
And
good. I thought you were going to say negative, and I'm like, okay, good. I like the positive spin of
well,
this.
that's
Just
that's
teach
the
us.
next thing. That's the next
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
And
That's part B.
and sometimes they're not, because I've made a religion out of it, and I think if I don't do this, I'm not gonna ascend.
Mm.
Okay, so
Or I'm
I
not going to be a good healer today, or I'm not going to be,
exactly.
whatever.
So I would
Yeah.
like
Mm,
everybody that's participated in
mm,
any kind of, ritual,
hmm.
whether it's, an actual religion or some sort of spiritual community. Let's open up the idea that we truly question that to see whether it's in alignment with our
Mm.
source energy within us. Because sometimes I have been in these big spiritual passages, I find myself, interestingly enough, the place that I was born with my family of origin. And I was like,
Mhm.
ooh, and then I know for myself that is the place for me to have the most expansive experience and that it's
Mm.
meaningful because I trust that much in my soul and my godliness and the God source that moves through me as me because it can't not be.
Yeah.
And I think I've avoided, participating in some rituals, or ceremonies,
Mm.
on sacred events, that really would have been detrimental to my personal evolution because I've already,
Oh my gosh.
you
Can
know,
you please give an example of that? And do it, do you know what a blind item is, Janet? You're so beautifully not a part of like pop culture, so I'll explain it. I'll give you what it means if you don't know, and others may not be like,
I'm like,
that wasn't in the channeling journal I read last week, Jill. Okay, so blind item in pop culture is some sort of like this happened, but I don't want to be gossipy and tell you who or where or what. But I do want you to get the gist of what happened because it is interesting or it is juicy or whatever the case is. So you just said something very important that I heard you say that you had the opportunity to participate or maybe even lead some sort of a very, very supposedly, whether it is or not, right? Allegedly, allegedly sacred ceremony, and
yeah,
you didn't.
yes.
If there's any blind item way that you could give us that, I feel like it could be very, very helpful.
Well,
And I don't want to put you on the spot. So if you're like, no, Jill, I'm not doing that, then
y-
okay. Then I'll
well,
make one up as I imagine it probably.
yeah, you could probably make it up. I mean, I can't, sometimes the way my recall works,
Okay.
it's very nonlinear.
Okay.
So it's not that I'm avoiding giving answers, but I can think of some days where I thought I should be on the mountain. I can be as specific as this. Like,
Okay.
this is that day. So this is the day you're on the mountain. This is the gateway
Okay.
that this needs to happen. And you'll see it and if you follow that community at all. And I mean
Mm-hmm.
healing work and consider themselves spiritual and energetic, whatever that you call that,
Yeah.
not even sure what
Yep.
to call it sometimes, but
Yeah.
this is the game. I mean, I know I do like healing and transformational work, right? And that's always,
Yeah.
well, but I don't know what other people call it anymore because it's just, but anyway, it's like, ooh, you need to be on the mountain that day. And then I look at my calendar and I was like, I'm at my niece's wedding. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I notice those moments because I know they're important. And I think it's
Mm.
where that level of religiousness, the non-helpful type of religiosity, right, was
Mm.
leading me down a path. And my soulfulness is like, not a chance.
Yeah.
It's not where
Not
you're
doing
supposed
that.
to be. And that's happened many times. And it's sort of like I get caught into the almost cultish, almost,
Mm. Whoa.
almost
She
cultish.
said it
I
before I
know,
did.
I did. And so I appreciate my soulfulness for that. And some people would be like, "Oh,
Mm.
how can I change that?" And it's
Yeah.
unchangeable. Like I can't change my niece's wedding, right?
Yeah.
The date, right?
Yeah.
You know? So it's
It's so
that
good.
very, very interesting. And on the other hand, I want to say if somebody has a religion that they love and they go there and they get inspired and they feel more like
Mm.
themselves and they're not and they've got
Mm.
this person that stands up there in front of everybody and whatever
Mm.
they do whatever they say it just fills their heart makes their heart bigger and they love
Yes.
it more like please do it because in that case
Love
you're
that
not
you said that.
making somebody else,
Mm,
you haven't put anybody else in between you and your relationship or your oneness with source. And I love
yeah.
that. I find one of the most important things for me to do is to stay inspired. And how do I do that? I don't go to
Hmm.
churches, but I could. I mean, I know I've sat in, churches before or whatever you call them,
Hmm.
synagogues. I've sat in those places and
Hmm.
I tend to hear that anyway because it's how I'm wired. I sort of sort through
Hmm.
and let kind of the stuff that would get in the way of my relationship with who I am.
Yes.
I let that
Yes.
go and I pull out the nuggets. Right. So I mean,
Mm.
I've done that in a lot of different situations where people would think like, "You did that there?" It's like, "Yeah, I did,"
Mm.
because that's how I'm wired. But so I don't it's um,
Yes.
all possible.
I
So,
love that. And I mean, it's a very, I love, thank you so much for adding what you just added.
mm,
Because I don't get angry when, I see people flocking to a church on Sunday or a mosque on Sunday or a synagogue or a temple on Saturday if they're, Jehovah's Witness. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not like, they're not doing it right. Like, I hope they're getting everything they want. And I'm assuming they're looking for connection to God. And I hope they're allowing their godliness and more importantly, the godliness into that experience. It's
yeah,
a bit of a bonus that a
yeah,
lot of those organized religions and less organized spiritual folks that
mhm,
they want it to be, whether it's beautiful music or a beautiful setting, or helpful messages, or follow these rules and your life will be easier. I feel like the positive intention, the godly intention is there. I just have a very strong opinion about what does a better job at that than others, but I want everybody to, we're all better as literally a species of life, humans, by individuals having some method of feeling as close to the God energy they are, right? So wherever they find that, that's great. I do think it's interesting that I talk to more and more people that still go to church that are like, it's the music for me, Jill. I don't even listen to what the minister's saying. Like, I'm so glad there's music. That's great. Take whatever you can, right? And that works, right? That works. I feel their God energy just going, look at her light up the minute that song came on. Oh, and that voice and the bass guitar and the whatever it was. My Jeff's grandmother loved organ music. Oh, she just like, oh, the organ music, and organ music just makes me cringe. But the organ. I'm just like, what, those pipes are huge. And those old churches, those organ pipes are literally huge.
yes.
The stained glass windows. I mean, yeah, it's kind of cool to now have traveled so many different places in the world and been in the Blue Mosque in Istanbul and the biggest mosque in Cairo and the Coptic churches, which are Christian, in also in Cairo, and just how different the vibe is and the energy is. And is it Old Testament kind of God, um, or very traditional ancient forms of source and Allah, or newer kind of refreshed versions. But every time I go in those institutions, I feel the respect for their tradition and their beliefs, and I bring my light with me.
Mm, yeah, me too.
I mean, why would I not? I can't like, well, I don't believe in the stuff, so I don't belong. My light doesn't belong here. I just want to radiate the space, right?
Yeah, we're not part-time. We're like full-time.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, I have a funny story. Can I tell a funny story? Do we have time?
Yeah, I think we do.
We were in a Greek Orthodox church as a travel group, one of the trips I arranged.
Mm,
And we were in Metziora, which is in northern Greece. And
mhm,
these churches are perched on these hills that almost look like the Patagonia hills.
mm,
And they defy logic in terms of architecture and geology, but you go in there, it's so heavy and so somber. I mean,
mm.
even the pictures of the saints are just like, I mean, it's
Oh.
just,
Oh, no.
and I started to get the giggles, and all I felt was Jesus just going, this is really hilarious, right? We got shushed. we got shushed by a church sanctioned tour guide that was giving a tour. She was, and I think they were saying to me in very heavy Greek accent, no laughing. And that just made me laugh harder. That's, I mean, just like, then what do we do? What are we doing? There's no laughing in the house of God. And I'm like, well, I don't like this flavor of God. Then, so I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but the fact that we got shushed just literally gave me the
Oh,
rebellious Jill giggles, and we had to go to another area. And I could not stop. I had to leave. I just fine.
yeah. Well, I mean, that is confusing, especially as a child when you have so much joy in your heart. And even when you
Yeah.
watch, whether it's in your own family or not, and everybody gets all like pious and they're inside, and then they go ahead and slap their kids, they come out and I hear like,
Oh,
I mean, there's those
that's
hypocrisy,
true.
right? There's a
Mm,
hypocrisy. And as a
yeah.
kid, I mean, kids know it. Like if you want to know, like kids know
Mhm.
that stuff and they see it, and that's where they start to get indoctrinated with some other ways of being in the world, which
Mm,
really shuts down their light. But and those are the things we're getting to clean up now, because
mm,
if those kids don't lose their light, we never want the
oh,
kids to lose the light. I don't want them to indoctrinated into,
right.
nothing.
And again, to play with the words, you can't lose your light, but you can dim your light. You can forget your light. You can feel disconnected from what you actually are,
Yes, that's right.
which is source energy. And what does that mean to you? Does that mean you have a vibrancy? Does that mean you have an automatic freshness, like a perpetual freshness in this reality as long as you're alive?
Yeah.
Right? Does that mean you can get the giggles and be silly? Or does being source energy mean stoicism and puritanical repression? Right? I mean, that's just like, wow. I feel like there's some belief systems that really have a twisted, sad version of source energy. And again, I admit I'm letting my opinions just be so bold here. Um, yeah, it's just a bummer. I just feel like it's just a big bummer because it's so
Well,
hard here.
and I think probably most of the people that are listening to this, like we all recognize that, and that's not helpful. And then there's like the more subtle ways that we can notice, I'll say hypocrisy,
Mm,
where what's actually happening is not congruent or in alignment with what we really feel or what we really know. And so I think it's helpful to bring that into that personal way. It's like, okay, let's just check inside and just pay attention, because if I want to have more access, there
mhm,
are belief systems that do make it harder for me to access and be who I am.
mm.
Belief systems, traumas, anything with that
Oh yeah.
electromagnetic charge, you know,
Yeah.
that, and so we get to continue to look at that for ourselves. And this is how the world changes bit by bit. The
Mm,
egregious examples are very easy to spot, but what about the subtle ways that I'm still perpetuating many versions of that? And I don't know, because it's unconscious. We talked about that, before, right?
so big.
The unconscious ones. And so when I see things like that, I really try to see, what sort of remnants are within me, because I really do
Mm.
love walking the walk. I mean, I really hate going up and saying I'm really sorry. So that's an incentive to, like clean up my life a little more. I mean, I'll do it. And sometimes I don't care. And sometimes it's fine. But sometimes I just like, oh, I can't believe I just did that. Now I get to go say, that was mean. I'm sorry, right? Like sometimes it just feels really hard to do, but that's my incentive to just keep adjusting my behavior
Mm,
in my inner authority, because it doesn't feel good.
mhm. Yeah,
And
it's good.
I didn't realize that that was actually active, you know?
That's beautiful. I know we're starting to wrap up here, but I'm sorry is maybe hard for people.
Mm,
I don't know if I've definitely gotten really authentic with my apologies and sorries, but I've also, what was harder for me is admitting I was wrong. There's a part of my Jill that's just like, we can't be wrong. It's just we are not allowed. We have to be right about everything. This was more pre this version of my Jill that is feeling so connected to Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit within myself and source energy. But there was another part of me that literally thought I was the operator of my brain, because I do love my brain. But it was just like, no, we have to be right about everything. Our identity, our sense of self in the world is based on being right, being smart and being right. So admitting I was wrong was just like, can't. And now with this more literally enlightened version of myself, it's so okay to go, oh, I was wrong about that. Okay, never mind then. Right. And my family, my husband has been around me long enough to just, he just smiles and giggles. He's like, what did you just say? And we make it comical. Because he remembers the version of my Jill that would go to great lengths to make sure I almost hid from myself when I was wrong about something. It had to be absolutely ridiculous. And I wasn't an asshole, but anyway, it had to be funny because everyone saw what was right there. You're like, no, Jill, you're wrong about that history or whatever. And I guess one day you'll figure it out. I hope, because you're messed up on this, you know. Anyway, that was one part. And then the other thing, going back to the religiosity, I love it that you said that word, or cultiness of spirituality. I would really encourage people to play with this idea of what are some things that you do or should be doing that you feel are necessary for you to feel allegedly connected to the source energy you are, whether that's nutrition or supplements or a daily practice, a ceremony, certain attendance, listening or following certain individuals, and just really, what are the first ones that come to mind? Well, I can't be as connected to God if, and just really look at that. And what if you just said, well, what if that's actually not true? What if you can provide a healing session if you're a practitioner on a day where you're not feeling your best and you're not feeling filled with the light that you are. But what if in the midst of the session, what if you allow yourself to do the session and you learn your ability to transmit light to another isn't as much about you as you would think?
Mhm.
What if you could have a big, juicy red meat hamburger before a session and it's the best session ever? What if you could have a lemon drop martini, right, the night before, and you were like even more of your light the next day, not because of the lemon drop martini, but in spite of the lemon drop martini? What if nothing can actually get in the way of the light that you are truly?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I have experimented with this in my own life, and the things that I thought that I had to do, I was like, hang on a minute.
Or that you couldn't do, right?
Like, back off and just see.
I just try it, right? You can always say, sorry, I'll give you your money back. And, that session wasn't as good as I'm capable of, or let them have their experience. And maybe it was the best one you've ever done, right? I distinctly remember being a guest on somebody's spiritual tele network thingy, telesummit, I think they call it. Um, and it was one I wasn't very familiar with, and I hadn't done that one before, but I'd done others. And I was like, I have a massive headache. Like I feel like I literally just want to crawl in bed. And I just kept thinking, should I cancel? I mean, this is a live event with his audience. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I felt this inner voice just go, well, let's just try. Maybe we'll be surprised by what happens. So I felt like I took my Jill and my headache and I just sort of like put her to the side a little bit in my sphere, like, we're just going to take care of you right here and just see what happens. It was literally one of the best interviews I'd ever done. The way that spirit transmitted in that conversation was so effortless, so in the flow, and so uplifted and so inspiring. And I got great feedback from my community and his community. And I was literally giggling at myself, going, well, good thing we didn't cancel because Jill had a headache.
That's beautiful.
It was almost like, what headache? Because I put that little side of me over here and I transcended beyond it. And I wish we would all give ourselves more permission like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good note to end on, to give ourselves more permission in general,
Mm,
which oftentimes in times of great change, which I think we're in, is just to try something new,
Mm,
and
yes.
sometimes to break up those old pen it doesn't even matter what it is, right?
Yeah. Go see a
Something
movie, just go watch a movie just because it looks fun and it's a musical that you liked. There's not
drive
really
a
a
different way,
spiritual
drive a
drive a
different
different path. Yes.
like
Listen to music that's not,
your
whatever
genre.
megahertz or whatever that you're supposed to. It's not in the right megahertz. Not enlightened. I don't even follow that stuff, but when I see it, I'm like, wait, what? Like, you don't listen to Diana Krall? I mean, like, huh? It's not soulful enough for you? Oh, that's too bad. I think she's amazing, right? She's so pedestrian, Jill. She's so 3D. Isn't she married to Elvis Costello? He's not enlightened. I mean, like, I don't know. Why do you have this dossier and who is enlightened and who isn't? God, how can you get more religious than that?
Oh gosh, it's
Okay. All
mm,
right. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Janet. You guys, thank you so much for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for leaving a comment about what your favorite part was or what made you think and ponder. We love to hear how it's going for you. And thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this with someone else or any of the other podcasts or something that you liked. There's ways to make shorts, by the way. If you want to, you could even just get your phone and record a little bit. And if you wanted to share that on social media, you totally could. If there was a little 2 minute or less section that you're like, this was my favorite part, because Janet and I aren't going to do it. I don't, well, Janet's Capricorn, she might. She might get the best parts in highlight reels and such. I'm very, very unlikely to do that. But I wish I had a version of my Jill. I haven't made her yet. That would be all diligent about the mini, versions that are the best. If those of you feel led to do that, thank you. I'm very grateful for your organized energy. So thank you so much, everybody. Thanks again, Janet. Love you.
love you too. Bye everybody.
Hey, episode number 6 in the books.